So let's rewind back to, why you decide to actually do a retreat in the first place, right? And we talked about some of those purposes at the beginning of the conversation. So isn't it true that no matter what the purpose is, you want to imbue change in the organization through change in the leaders and change in the relationships, and that you want something to change, right? And so we know that you need to do something to reinforce. So if you're going to do a particular thing at the event, how can that be constructed in a way that it's got legs well beyond it? Because everybody knows when you get back into the office, it's more the same. Okay, you've got this huge number of things that are just waiting for you because you couldn't get to it at the retreat, and all of a sudden you're going double time. You don't have time for all this new stuff, right? And this is terrible because, actually it's true. Okay, in almost more of the time. So what if, for example, like I had done a retreat several years ago where one of the objectives was to build in a stronger degree of critical thinking, right? And so guess what? There was some critical thinking work that everybody did together, right? Actually, there's some pre-work that they had to do so that when we came to retreat, each of the subgroups were able to we're able to present and we did a whole bunch of things. But what happened afterwards? Because there was an output, if you will, from these 3 or 4 different critical thinking projects, etc. Well, we could have made that project something that was very theoretical, which would have been nice. It would have achieved the objective of let's imbue stronger critical thinking skills in this team, and so we could have. Instead, what we said is, what are some of the specific challenges that the business, the industry is actually facing? And we constructed this exercise so that each of the groups imagined and dealt with an aspect of that. And then afterwards, we said, okay, you know what, we're going to use that. And people in the organization are going to use that output to check in with prospective clients in that industry. They're going to use that as part of the organization's thought leadership, right? They're going to present it to different groups within the organization to share some of the knowledge that they co-created at this retreat, right? And so all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of other things. And by the way, the CEO is going to check in to make sure all this was actually happening. This has got a lot of interesting legs. It's almost like killing multiple birds with one stone, right? But more importantly, it wasn't some theoretical exercise that happened beginning, middle, and end, and that's it, and then we're back to our real life. Instead, it had some life after that, right? That's just one very, very simple example. There's many other ways to extend the learning. An obvious one is how are you going to reinforce what's learned? Right? When there's reinforcement, what happens a month after? So for us, we do an impact meeting about a month after where it's not, well, let me just rewind. Right after the event, we'll do a postmortem, but a month after, we'll do an impact meeting, which is what's changed. Okay. And just by doing that, it typically causes a lot of conversations internally, which brings back what was accomplished, what was learned. But it also was a conversation about maybe something didn't actually work, or maybe the people came up with, there's a challenge this way or that way. So we can have a conversation about how to address that particular challenge. Have you considered approaching it this way? What if it was reframed that way? I think it's a question of scheduling. Maybe it can be scheduled. Can it be embedded into your management meetings, whatever it happens to be? Or maybe there's a certain type of reinforcement. A particular person or two needs some upskilling or some coaching, or maybe the organization as a whole, we got to move it from the leadership team, for example, or department, across to more people, right? So the idea of saying, hey, if we're going to invest huge dollars in a retreat, we got to make sure that it makes a difference, right? And it lays the framework to move the organization, because there's some things you can only do together that you cannot do apart, or you cannot do together in the office, because you just don't have the concentrated time.